The danger is growing. Japan and China are the third and second largest economies in the world. The US is treaty-bound to defend its ally in Japan, which is one of America's best allies in the world. However, the United States at the same time does not want to get drawn into a war over a set of disputed rocks that are currently administered by Japan, but that China is claiming as its own. What's really necessary here is a clear American commitment to support our ally, combined with a framework for both China and Japan to walk back from a confrontation, given that the stakes are very, very high, and that it's very difficult to envision a war between these very sophisticated countries with quite serious military capabilities that would remain very limited. Even if you had just quite a very limited conflict, it would draw in the United States. It would test the US-Japan alliance. It would have terrible repercussions for China's reputation in Asia, given that China has really focused on having a peaceful rise. And it would gravely destabilize the global economy, because Northeast Asia is really at the center of the global economy. Our Japanese friends would say we probably haven't calibrated our response correctly, because our Japanese friends are unclear to what extent we would back them in this dispute with China. At the same time, our Chinese friends seem emboldened by the fact that there's been a little less US clarity than one might have expected, that there have been some tensions in the US-Japan alliance, and China seems to have seen this as a useful way to drive a wedge between Washington and Tokyo. There are a couple principles here. One is that the US should not expect Japan to commit any surprises. Landing troops on these disputed islands, another visit to the Yasukuni Shrine, which the Chinese find very destabilizing. At the same time, China is really being tested here. The Chinese talk about a new model of great power relations, where China's rise does not produce the instabilities that were produced by the rise of previous great powers that led to war and conflict. But if the Chinese are serious, they really do need to walk back from a conflict in Northeast Asia. Because there's a big reputational test for them in terms of what kind of superpower is China going to be. Is it going to be one that bullies its neighbors, not just Japan over the Senkakus, but in the South China Sea? Or is China going to pursue peaceful dispute mechanisms, walk back from the possibility of a conflict, preserve a stable relationship with the United States and Japan, both of which are among its most important trading powers? So the US could probably be a little more clear here about its expectations for both countries. We see them as a distraction because Americans are always thinking about the future rather than the past. The history issues in Asia, though, in Northeast Asia, are very alive. And so you've seen history abused and contorted in many countries. You've seen China basically to drum up nationalist support for the regime in China, use history as a weapon to beat up on the Japanese in particular. You've seen the Chinese resuscitate stories from many, many decades ago, even a century ago in the case of colonial incursions in China, and use these to put other countries on the defensive. You've also seen in Japan a big debate about kind of the use and abuse of history. Prime Minister Abe's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine, the occasional ill-considered comment by a Japanese politician about comfort women and other issues from a long, long time ago. Now, terrible things happen in war, and countries do terrible things, which is why we all struggle to avoid war. But the reality today is that Northeast Asia faces huge security, economic, political pressures from some of these dynamics over the territorial conflicts that have nothing to do with anything that happened 100 or 70 or 50 years ago. So on the one hand, history has been abused and maybe contorted. On the other hand, countries need to find a way to live and cooperate peacefully together and not be hostage to the past.